Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, and we are gathered here for the series organized by Women Members Excellence Committee. The logo or the symbol for the committee is IDOL, that is inclusivity, diversity, outstanding, and leadership. So the women leader from the various fields are invited on this forum. They share their experience and expertise in this forum. So today we are having with us CA Lakshmi Rao, uh, who is a senior chartered accountant from a leading CA firm, and she is having varied experience in audit. So the topic is internal audit risk management's perspective. She is having 34 years experience, and she is senior partner in Sarath and Associates since 2000, and she is heading Mumbai branch office operations. She's certified the firm is certified auditor of World Bank Finance Project, certified forensic auditor, certified money laundering specialist. She's having vast experience in the field of statutory audit, internal audit, various types of bank audits, etc. And the specialization is investigation audit and due diligence audit. So she has handled 150 plus investigating audits for central government, state government investigating agencies like CBI, ED, NCB, EOW, SIT, ACB, CID, etc. And also, they have done audits for regulators like SEBI, Stock Exchange, BSE, NSE, PSU banks, private banks, and international banks also. She has led the team in investigating the cryptocurrency fraud cases for Pune Cybercrime ADG-SIT, Enforcement Directorate, Nanded Police, Thane Cybercrime, etc. Their firm is the first in the country to officially appointed by various government investigating agencies in cryptocurrency scams and frauds. And she has led the team in all the cases. So they are having very well experience in digital currency investigations, analysis of digital data, and uses of the data analytical tools for analyzing the data, and have vast experience in auditing different types of audit in various industries. So we are very fortunate today that we have Lakshmi Rao ma'am, who is having varied experience in various types of audit, and she is specialized in internal audit. And today uh, we are talking about the risk management perspective for the internal audit. Over to you, Lakshmi ma'am. Thank you very much for coming on the phone.
Thank you for warm invitation this afternoon. Uh, I am very happy to be on this platform to uh, discuss about internal audit with the Women Excellence team here. So basically, my expertise is in forensic audit, which is more close or having a very thin line between internal audit and the forensic audit. So I understand how important this internal audit and the risk that the company has. So I would try to put my best foot to explain how the management perspective regarding this internal audit and the risk. So first and foremost, I want to explain and understand the title given to me first. I would also emphasize to understand the title. So when we are doing internal audit, what we are reading is how important I would like to explain. See, the title says internal audit and risk. After that, there is a dash. Then management's perspective. This gives a different meaning if I read the same internal audit and risk management. So this the will be giving a different meaning. So when we are reading a sentence itself, we need to know what we are going to understand, how we are going to express it, what we are looking at, understanding this is very important for internal auditors while doing the audit, and who plays very important role in present scenario and helping the management to take the decision based on the findings of the internal audit. So in the present lecture of this topic given to me, I would be emphasizing on management's perspective of internal audit and the risk. So, my thrust in this lecture would be on management's perspective, not just internal audit and the risk. Had there been an internal audit and there is a risk being highlighted, how management would take it forward is what I would be emphasizing more. Mostly internal audit and risk management must have been discussed several times by several eminent speakers. Presently, I would be emphasizing what is internal audit, what is the risk, and what is the risk management, and how companies management will take the perspective of these two things. That's what I would be explaining in this particular session. So going to next slide. So we will first understand how internal audit has evolved. Firstly, many years internal auditing was viewed as a necessarily evil. I remember I qualified in 89 when internal audit or an auditor comes. Uh, People see as if some our enemy is coming, and they never used to talk to auditors also. They used to be away. So it's something like they don't want to disclose anything to auditor, not talk to auditor, move around the auditor. So this was the time when the internal audit used to happen. Auditors were inside, but now the times have changed. After the recession in 2008, more important importance was given on internal audits, so that in view of the so many banks that have been fallen due to recession and other reasons, now across the globe the companies and the management wants to have a pre-hand understanding about how the company is going ahead, and are there any weaknesses, are there any problems, to understand that the business is going forward or having any inherent weaknesses or any problems. For that, now they have evolved with a system of having people inside the company who would test the process to prevent outside audit surprises. Generally, what happens when audit happens, that is mostly like financial auditors, statutory auditors, they come and start doing the audit. There are certain things that comes and as a surprise to the management. The points that is been raised by the statutory auditor who will sign the balance sheet, the findings of the statutory auditors are so shocking that management has to give a representation or has to give a let the auditor give the qualification in the report. So instead of having all this, now, for last 2 decades, auditors began to discuss the relationship between risk and the control, and found the role in process of efficiency and effectiveness. So, internal audit is more of how things are happening, so that last minute surprising or shocking findings of statutory auditor are not coming up, and also that there are no qualifications in the audit report. So to take care of all this, the process of internal auditing has started. So today the definition of internal audit places in partnership with management and governance. It's not like that internal auditor does his job and give the report, submit the report and go away and raise the bill and just leave the okay, I mean, go to the next audit. Now it's the internal part of the company, and that may be done by external or internal, but it is not just completing a job and audit and just go away. It's about part of internal auditing is a part of internal process of the company, and the auditors help increase the chances of achieving strategic and business objectives through assessing control, risk management, and governance. How it is done, I will explain you in the next slides. So I'm explaining how the internal audit has taken more importance over a period. The world is witnessing rapid development and changes in the business environment with artificial intelligence. Thus, business organizations are moving to develop effective structures, processes, and re engineering their operations to add some accountability in line with their need for more relevant and reliable information for decision making. So, how to manage risk rather than avoid it? As a result, the role of internal audit by identifying, measuring, disclosing these risks in a way that the users of the financial statements can judge the effectiveness in manage and control risks that may exposed in the future to make the decisions. So nowadays, if you see, the companies are at IT companies and other big companies are using heavily depending on artificial intelligence, high-end softwares, and high-end applications on which the data is processed for the business transactions. If you see the accounts which we are seeing, many companies follow the Oracle or SAP or specialized software, accounting software they are developing for user friendly for the company. So it is been specially prepared for the each company. So as an auditor, when we start an audit as a statutory auditor, as an internal auditor, unless we know these softwares or this technology, we won't be in a position to identify whether the, say for example, if we are seeing the revenues, first an auditor would assure the revenue reported by the company is correct or higher or wrong or right. When we express our opinion in the auditor's report, we need to first understand the integrity of the numbers that had flown as a revenue. How do we do that in the scenario where the company is having a high end software or SAP, and the auditors does are not trained in this particular softwares? So how do we ensure the, suppose the company is reporting 100 crores revenue, how are we assuring that the revenue is 100 and not 101 or 110 or say 95? How are we doing it? How do we ensure that? So statutory auditor also to some extent rely on internal audit and their findings. So the testing of integrity and the artificial intelligence, the use of artificial intelligence, and all, because of short of time for statutory auditor who does the audit either on quarterly basis or on financial year end basis, he has very little time to go through each and every transaction. So he relies more on internal audit. So internal audit role and their assurances on the processes and the effective structures and the operations that are taken by the company to post into revenue or not, that kind of entries that we generally learn in our CA profession, are they really done in a way, revenue recognition and all are done in a way it is to be in compliance with accounting standards or not? When we have to see all this, so Mostly internal auditors does this job during their internal audit itself, so that if there are any lapses or any issues or any problems or any slipovers in this technology driven accounting systems, these are highlighted by internal auditor in time before the statutory auditor steps in, so that management would take they will judge the effectiveness of such slipovers or the gaps, and they will ideally they will take that judgment and see that these things are not affected in the statutory audit and by the end of the financial year, so that statutory auditor does not object it and qualify the report. So from this perspective, internal audit is a very important for the management decisions. Going to next slide. The purpose, as I already told you, the internal audit, it is an independent and objective assurance and consulting activity designed to add value and improve an organization operations. As I already explained, it is an activity that will give an assurance to the management. The assurance is not necessarily 100%. Assurance is, we say our opinion, we say which is independent opinion, and it is the assurance, maybe 50% is right, we may say 90% is right and 10% is wrong. Whatever our opinion that we are giving, we give an objective assurance. Objective is the purpose for which the audit we are doing, so that is the objective. And the assurance is the level of assurance that we are going to give the management on dependency on the and the effectiveness of the processes that are in place in the company. And it is also a consulting activity. Mostly some are consulting in the sense it is been depended on the external auditor, or could be it is a part of the internal team or internally one vertical or a department that take care of this internal audit. And the main purpose of this activity is to give a value addition to the management, to say that something is wrong, something is right, or right, partially wrong, or there is a requirement of improvement in the operations. So that will be given by the internal audit, and it helps the organization accomplish its objectives by bringing a systematic and disciplined approach to evaluate, improve effectiveness of risk management, control, and governance processes. Next. So, internal audit function is crucial to company's growth, objectively evaluating risks. So, the risk of each, whether a transaction, doing a transaction, passing an entry, or any such kind. If there is any document, document valid, invalid, or absence of the total document, and the effectiveness of that risk also is being assessed, and it is being analyzed and assessed, and the processes are and the systems that are being established in the company, and doing spot checks. They literally physically go to the spots and see how the processes the departments are following, what checks they are doing before passing through a document, or passing through a transaction, or passing through a process. These are being verified during the course of internal audit function. And so many unknown issues are also comes up when they do all this kind of analyzing and assessing the processes and keeping the departments aligned and maker checker type of concepts. If the company is following, are they ineffective, or if there is any absence of such a maker checker concept that are being highlighted, and are these meeting the objectives of the company. These are the things which auditor will verify, check, and analyze and report to the management, so they bring the value addition to the normal internal audit. Next. Uh, so, as I already explained, internal audit has to be an unbiased review of companies' internal audit systems, processes, and procedures. Generally, companies will have internal audit as its part of one of its department, having their own people who are on payroll of the company itself, who would be doing this audit. So how a company's employees themselves can audit the same companies, their colleagues which are who are handling different verticals. Suppose if they are friends, internal department, I mean inter department employees are friends with each other. Do you really feel if there is anything that they come across weaknesses in internal audit, do they really report it? Do they really highlight it or not? Ideally, it should be that whether internal audit process, when it is been taken up by internal team or external team, they have to be very much unbiased and have to be reporting everything that they come across. It's nothing about personal while we do the internal audit. The goal of internal audit is to give a independent assurance. Suppose if I don't say that this particular department person is not taking care of vouchers before even being processing a payment, and knowingly if I am not reporting it or not highlighting it for some reason, maybe for vested interest, so then I am not giving my independent assurance to the company's operations, to the management. So the very much important thing in internal audit, whether internal department or external auditor does this process, he has to help that their team to accomplish their goals by bringing a disciplined approach and objective perspective to the effectiveness of internal control. He has to tell the controls that are being established in the company are effective. Means even if somebody puts an expenditure bill, and if it is passed without actual voucher, actual bill, just a voucher, then it has to be because somebody can break through that loophole. So these things have to be reported, and what could be the risk out of by this internal control weakness. If suppose the expenses are being pushed and paid without proper check or without proper supporting documents, what could be the risk? Risk is cash loss. It's a real time cash loss. So somebody is using this internal weakness in the internal control and making good of the company, out of which they are it's a loss of money to the management. So this has to be assessed, and the risk management is how much risk by this is to be quantified, and adherence and alignment with the company goals and objectives. So we internal auditors have to definitely see the weaknesses, find out the weaknesses if there are any. If one find out the weakness, then they have to evaluate the risk involved in this weakness. Then is the company staff are adhering to the company's goals and its objectives to be seen and reported. So some areas that internal audit management focuses include health and safety compliances and regulatory compliances. All these compliances and the risks are very high in present scenario. Even now, the environmental, suppose a factory is manufacturing some goods without having the pollution control board certificate, which is expired, and in internal auditor does not highlight it to the management, something drastically can go down. It can go as well to company gets closed their operations. So it is very important to see everything during the internal audit based on the areas which they are doing the audit. Going to next slide. So what is internal audit? It's a valuable resource to an organization executive management. So management or the board, how do they come to know that there is a process lapse or there is a procedural lapse or weakness in the control system where the cash is getting lost, like cash loss is happening. Maybe in say for hospitals, the medicines are being used without even indenting or without even being called for the patient. So in case of one injection, 10 injections are brought and they only used one, nine were not used. So somebody's taking away for their personal use. So these are all cash losses. So how do we, as an auditor, as an internal auditor, how do the management sitting in the board or sitting in their cabins and their places do come to know about this kind of lapses? So internal audit itself is a valuable resource for the management which expects from the auditor to highlight such weaknesses in the system. If there is any leakage of money or income, which has to be highlighted to the management, so that management will take necessary steps to resolve these problems, these lapses. So similarly, the auditing also helps the audit committee, governing bodies, and also stakeholders in the and helping achieving their business goals and objectives, as well as strengthening internal control and governances. See, nowadays you can see lot many scams and lot many frauds happening internally also. Many a times the employees also whistleblowing mechanism has somebody comes across some labs and that is being reported to SEBI if it is a listed company. If it is not, then it will tell somebody in the management per person. So before such thing happens, if our internal controls and are strengthened and that is tested whether the controls are in place and testing of the controls are also are in place, periodical testing happens and it is reported to the management, so the leakage or the objectives and the goals of the business are achieved by the management easily. So the role of internal audit is a very valuable resource for the management to achieve their goals. So the global demand, that is why internal auditors has a very important role to play. So the demand for them is very high. uh, let's go to yeah. So can we go to yeah. So what kind of internal audits we have that companies would engage? Compliance audit. As what the compliance audit does, assess compliance with the relevant laws and regulatory policies and procedures. So the management want to know whether the compliance, suppose there is a pharmaceutical company, if the pharmaceutical company has operations across the globe, across the country, so there are a lot many compliances, legal compliances it has to do with, depending upon the country and depending upon the cross border transactions. So, are we really having all that licenses? Are we having all permissions from the required and those governments and all? Are we following the process of regulatory, whether keeping everything in place? Suppose, just take an example, if our life insurance policy or health insurance policy is expired and we did not renew for a, say, a month or say 15 days, it expires, then we will not be getting any advantage if it is health particularly. Even if it is life insurance, we will not get the policy. So bonus also gets lapsed. Everything gets lapsed. So benefits that we had, we get lapsed. So if we can, as an individual, have such kind of problems by not renewing our own thing in time, so imagine if the company does not check its licenses and its other permissions cross border or within the country. And to achieve this, they have to have some policies and procedure to check, maybe monthly, maybe fortnightly, maybe half yearly. In some procedures, some SOP, standard operating procedures, the company has to evolve with, which an internal auditor will be appointed, so, to see that the company is complying with this all audit procedures. So, what is the role of the auditor, compliance auditor, who is an internal auditor? What does he do? Whether company is having the policies in place, how frequently they are verifying, and is actual verification is being done. He will take out certain licenses on a sample basis, check, see the dates, are they in place, are they being recorded properly, is there somebody to follow up, who are doing, how periodically they are doing, what are the controls. These are all the checking they do as part of internal audit, whoever does the compliance audit. It's very important. Suppose if any of the license is not there and there is an export or there is an import of any product, then there is going to be a legal issues the company may face, which could be serious for companies like pharmacy or any other companies. So having which has a bigger operations across the globe or internally also, like pollution control kind, see, environmental audits which will cover. So the compliances with regulatory, sir, for example, SEBI, if the listed company is having lot many regulatory policies to be followed, so those policies of the SEBI and regulatory policies, are the company following up periodically? Suppose there is a event happened that one of the board member or the shareholder has liquidated his share holding in a sizable number, or he acquired say sizable number of shares, or some other outsider has acquired a sizable number of its shares, then that has to be reported to the regulator. So if this is not done, there is a serious repercussions from the regulatory towards the company. So who will monitor this? So the company will have a setup. There is a required procedures and policies to be in writing that has to be followed by the company. And internal auditor's duty is to see whether these are in place and whether they are followed by the people who are given the job to check periodically, and this is happening or not. So likewise, environmental audit also, which is about the impact of companies' actions, operations on the environment, which is important very much nowadays, may also assess the organizational compliances levels. Suppose this pollution, if there is any chemical that comes out or wastage which comes out of the company, maybe a plastic, maybe a chemical, maybe a liquid or a gas or any other such thing which is affecting the environment, and there is an objection from the government about that. So the internal audit, for the purpose of environmental audit, they give as a specific audit purpose. The internal auditor would check these and give assurances to the management. If there are any lapses, they will timely highlight this to management, who will in turn take the necessary steps to resolve those problems in time. Likewise, security and technology audit, which evaluates organizational information technology systems and the underlying infrastructure to assess the accuracy and security of data, information, and intellectual property. You know, this is called IS audit. Generally, for this separate qualifications also auditors have to possess to understand whether data breach is happening, or not just breach, even internally. As I already explained, suppose the company is posting 100 crores revenue, how an auditor is assured that entire revenue is being considered, whether there are any income that is being as per accounting standard, income recognition has happened or not. We have come across many a times in our audits where the income is recognized even before the agreement is entered into, and it's a listed company. So they rejected that IPO because had the internal auditor seen that these agreements are not in place, and the recognizing the revenue in time is wrong, the timing of recognition is wrong, and that had been taken up by this statutory auditor. So too many places the lapses have happened, which ultimately company could not come out with the IPO. So thing is very small because timely recognition of revenue is a very, it's a technical analysis of the auditor which has to happen. Like the IT team was just posting all the income that entries that they were in accounting team was passing, but there was no check whether these are the income actually generated or to be generated, or that timely verification was not happened in that particular company. Likewise, the sometimes it so happen the some revenues are not considered into the, or not flown into the data buckets where they have SAPs where they have integrate the all sources of revenues integrate into one particular consolidated revenue head. So these are the things which in during the internal audit, the security checks not just outside breaches, inside the environmental of the IT securities of the company. They see that in data integrity is there, while the numbers that are coming out of the softwares, coming out of the SAPs or the things are correct. They test, the auditor do test these numbers and give the assurance to the company. Mostly this is technical based, generally done by the CISA, DISA qualified persons. Uh, the other one is performance audit. This audit evaluates if a company is meeting the internal targets and able to hit key performance indicators and other goals set. You know, nowadays performance evaluation does happen. So, management would be interested to know if the targets they can meet in this year or not. So, The internal auditor will give such assurances based on the areas given by the company, whether they would be in a position to meet the goals during the period given. Financial audit, as you all know, internal auditor does this financial audit, particularly revenues, expenses, stocks, and other maybe interest, bank transactions, and all other things. And based on the accounting standards, the outstanding revenue or outstanding expenses, how to take, how to recognize, what is the timing of recognition, and all these are being taken by the statutory. But however, this internal auditor would ensure that these are all taken in time, only to the extent of the 31st March related only is taken by the statutory auditor. Otherwise, all internal auditor would do the audit continuously, mostly continuously, to give a overall business uh, the achievements, goals, and what are the budgets and what are the expenses they have done, that periodically they report to the management. So then operational audit is another type of internal audit where companies control mechanisms and their overall effectiveness, efficiency, and reliability is verified. Other than this, there are special audits for which management would like to see whether the particular area, if there is any leakage, some theft is happening, some leakage of income, some leakage of stocks are happening, something like lapses are there, then they will specifically appoint internal auditor to give the assurance to the management. So these are the types of internal audits which helps the management to take the decisions. Going to next slide. So, why do we need an internal audit? As I already explained, I will give in a pointers: reduce liability, help control risks, free up management to focus on core mission, improve the accuracy of financial and operational information, offer a second opinion, enhance service delivery, improve financial results. And some requires in some countries, it's not legally required in US. Exceptions is New York Stock Exchange listed corporation and few specific industry government, they require internal. Otherwise, across everybody requires the internal audit function to happen. It's a require mandatory. Next slide. Yeah. So, what are the objectives of the internal audit? Now, I'm again and again I'm trying to tell from the perspective of management. So, management would like to know whether accounting standards are being adopted and reported as per the accounting standards in the financial statements, uh, and reviewing the managerial functions. So, who will assure the managerial functions are being handled in a proper way? Each company has different verticals, different departments. Are they working in coordination? Are there any issues at the managerial function? I mean, at the senior level, who will assure this? So it is the audit system, internal audit mechanism, which will fulfill this objective. So verifying the accuracy of accounts. Who will verify the accuracy of accounts? The accounts department just post the numbers. They post the transactions as and when there is a transaction, there is a document they get, they pass the transaction. But the is it rightly very done or wrongly done? So some mechanism has to be there to verify on a sample basis and report the assurance level to the management. Is it right? It's happening 100%, or is it happening 50-50 or 89-20? The as a percentage. So that's why in internal audit we have a coloring mechanism. Risk is high, low, medium, or no risk. So This itself is a way of explaining, giving assurance to the management, based on which management will look into the red and high level risk reported in the internal audit. So this is the assurance that the internal audit mechanism gives. So detection of errors and frauds. Likewise, reviewing the system of internal check controls, verifying companies' assets, and verifying the liabilities. So this is also part of the internal audit objectives. Going to next slide. So how do we assure management? By facilitating the achievement of business objectives, optimum utilization of resources, evaluate internal controls, systems and procedures, identification, assessment of control of risks, and facilitating corporate governance code compliances, reporting independently to the audit committee, and review compliance with policies, procedures, laws, and regulations, increasing reliability of financial statements. So, our ultimate goal of internal audit is this, that is the eighth one, the reliability of the financial statements. The auditor, statutory auditor, prepare the financial statements, which is on which the outsiders, that is users of the financial statements, rely upon. So the statutory auditor, how do he rely on what he is auditing? He will partially does his own checks, and also partially rely on the internal audit reports. Similarly, the management also would want to report in the financial statements. Yeah. Okay, so this is the assurances the management would like to have from the internal audit and their procedures. Next slide. So, how do this coordination between internal audit and risk management perspective? So, basically, internal auditor whenever comes out with an issues and wants to report, management would definitely would want to have a discussion, debate, and try to justify their position not to report. Once it is in the audited report and is being reported to audit committee board, management would not be in a favor of such kind of issues. So before that, it is always advisable and is a process where internal auditor has to identify the issues with the ideally with the evidences of the incidences of any lapses that they are coming across, and would want to highlight to the management which is of high risk, and discuss with the management separately, and have a thorough check about it, what he identified and the evidences he had seen are right, or are there any other explanation that the management would want to give, or other documents or would want to give, then check, then report, so that this is reported to the board. And because the board, once it is documented, that is been seen by the statutory auditor also. So possible that all the issues are properly identified with the document evidences and the incidences which we can explain, which will give a positive assurance to the management that everything is going well or not going well, whichever comment we want to give, with a proper explanation. Next slide, please. So the possible stakeholders of the internal auditor, as we have already discussed, are audit committee board, CEO, CFO, and potentially other chief officers of different departments. Maybe sales head wants to know what are the sales done, what's the revenue. I mean, like purchases head wants to know how much purchases they made under each head. So different heads, chiefs also would like to know their points and their weaknesses in their particular departments. Like secondaries, stakeholders or other business unit executives would want to know the other by for cross checking and external auditors and regulators and investors and creditors and government audit citizens and taxpayers and territories stakeholders are employees and retirees, investment analysts, and potentially the general public. So these are all the people who would want to know or interested in understanding internal auditors reports, findings, and based on which they would want to form an opinion other than the management. So going to next slide, please. Yeah, management can be more efficient. So how do internal audit risk and its management will take that risk, how it will address. Say, for example, external audit, they test a financial system and they come across a cash management process as a is fraudulently managed. So definitely the management is interested in seeing that it is managed properly. So this identified by the internal audit, the risk risk in content in that is being identified and reported to the management. The management would take suitable steps to keep this in line. Likewise, internal audit may also save companies money where there is a income leakage or there is a theft. That also, if it is reported by the auditor, the management would definitely would want to arrest these things. So likewise, company enhances its control environment because the system, we all say system has to work on its own, not the people who work. It is the system should work on its own. So for that, the assurance of internal audit to the management is very important. Likewise, internal audits may also make company more efficient, and internal audit reports also give management a head start to make corrections, and certain departments may need enhanced oversight. This also management, if it is being highlighted and informed in a way, it is to be informed through internal audit reports with the documentary evidences or incidents. The management would want to definitely, based on their risk appetite, would want to address the issues and have a better working and control environment and have achieved their goals and objectives. Next slide, please. So 5 C's, this is all everybody would be knowing. In internal audit is criteria, condition, cause, consequence, and corrective action. So what is the criteria? Why we are doing internal audit? Which area we are doing is very important to understand before we do the audit. And the conditions which we are doing within which the limitations also we need to understand, and the purpose for which management would what purpose for which they are conducting this audit. Auditor has to understand this thoroughly, otherwise our deliverables are mismatching with what their expectations are. Likewise, the consequences of the findings of the internal audit and the corrective actions the management which they have to take if the internal audit can recommend. That is the main purposes for which internal auditor would report in their reports. And in that also they will also highlight the levels of risk with each kind of findings that they have. So the management would be in a better position to take the decisions to achieve the aims of the management, and the audit findings are properly been positively and constructively taken by the management. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I would end my presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Lakshmi Madam. It was indeed a very great, good insight into the internal audit functions, as you have rightly explained. And it is very critical to the company's growth. We always know that we are the first, the internal auditors are the first checkers of the doings of the management. And indeed, it promotes them, it prompts them at an early stage where they can rectify their mistakes before it goes out for the public viewing.
So obviously, it is definitely a very, very important function, and it intends to mitigate all sorts of risks, like as you have very deeply and very nicely touched upon the various risks involved in this particular function in the internal audit, which the function is being taken place. The risks like operational risk, environmental risk, system risk, and fraud risks are identified. Then various types of audits you have explained. What types of audits are there covered in internal audit, like compliance audit, environmental performance audit, special audits, all those audits. And then obviously the last thing but not the least, the 5 C's which you told. So we have been reading this from our CA days. These 5 C's are the criteria, condition, cause, consequence, and corrective action. So I think I'm sure a lot of people would be benefited by this particular deliberation. And let us take up some questions which has come across. So the question, not many, but few questions are there that which one of the query has been raised that as per IIA, technical person should be involved in internal audit. However, till now in India, it is mainly restricted to CAs. However, if IIA concept is accepted by organization, will that be a challenge for CAs? What's your view, ma'am?
Definitely not. See, a technical person is only having knowledge in that particular area of his expertise. But a CA, if you see in our normal audits also, suppose we take a civilian work in progress of a construction company, we take a civil engineer certificate. We are not civil engineers, but we take a
Correct.
certificate of civil engineer. He's a technical person, but being a civil engineer, can he do an internal audit? No. So the internal auditor is definitely related to financial part, which I say is also a technical person. I am also a technical person, right? So
Sure.
in case of court, if I am giving some witness, expert witness, I say my technical knowledge, my advocate doesn't understand.
True. That's very right.
So I am also a technical person. So I am taking a help of another technical person. So each technical person has their own roles. So not necessarily what is said is correct. We are not we cannot be replaced by anyone. That I can assure you. With my
Okay.
experience, only
That's nice.
CA can do what CA can do.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So another question is there, without disclosing identity, can you share example of complex investigation? I don't know what is this.
Compliance investigation. Is it
The
compliance?
querist has written complex investigation. Probably they're wrong. So if you can,
Could
whatever
be
you understand.
compliance. I take it as a compliance investigation or
Okay.
audit. Audit.
Okay.
We are talking about internal audits.
Okay.
So investigation also happens. I have done investigations. So I have seen many a times during the investigations, the factories see account becomes NPA. Mostly it is been reported to CBI as a fraud. So I investigated for CBI a borrower account. So if I come across, I see the company has its pollution board certificate is expired, permission is expired long ago, and it is not supposed to produce, but bank doesn't know about it.
Right.
So management had never seen, probably. There is no such remark either in internal audit reports nor anywhere. Nowhere it is been discussed, nowhere it is been reported. So I consider it in investigation as the management probably knowing, not documented.
Right.
Somewhere something was hidden, because of which they could not produce without permissions. They had some problems which is not reported. When there is no production, no manufacturing, no revenue generation, no cash flows, NPA.
True.
It's a chain of transactions of for becoming account bad. So while investigation, these things will come. So that comes in the compliance audit of the company, where internal auditor's job to highlight it and document it. which was not done.
Correct, correct. Thank you so much, Lakshmi ma'am. I'm sure
Thank
with your rich experience, everyone would have been very well enlightened with the internal audit importance. So I would now request the next coordinator to please take up the session.
thank you. Thank you.
Interrupt, ma'am. Actually, many
Th-
times there are
Thank,
small firms or small chartered accountant. How they should approach client for internal audit function, audit purpose.
Internal audit, see you can give your profile, you can meet their executives to explain your expertise, to see how you will take up this challenge. I also have. fact in fact, this challenge, and this, there's no rightful answer according to me. Being a woman in a chartered accountancy profession, I am being in a practice. It's very difficult to get clients. It's not that easy. But definitely, without any losing heart, if you keep trying, I'm sure your expertise and knowledge is always recognized. You keep trying. You start with banks, you start with small clients. Banks have, income tax have, wherever you have connects, you can start with, you do in a small way. Slowly one day you will achieve. And big companies do have their own firms, which generally statutory auditor and internal auditor may be knowing to each other, or could be, there are challenges always in the profession.
A
One has.
small query has come up whether we can take up the technical team. Can do we have time? Do we have time for a question which has just popped up?
I think
Time. It
Meenakshi,
is
you
actually
take
a
up a
very
question.
Actually, it is a very specific question. I don't know whether it is right to take it up because they are asking, Madam, for internal audit of a restaurant chain, what are the main areas where we can look into? I think it's a very generic question and it's
Yeah,
specific to industry.
I will take the question. I don't mind.
Okay, okay,
I
sure.
have across all industries I audited, so I can take it. Restaurants, mainly you have to focus on the sources of income, sources of expenses, because the restaurants have a lot, many services they provide. Take home, I don't know what kind, how do they sell their products? Is it sitting there and eating, or do they really send somewhere? So the main head is income. Assurance is more important. Number two is expense to the related to the directly to the income, like purchases and all. These are the main important things. Third important, from Satyam we all learned that employee cost is to be definitely seen for restaurants, because there could be a ghost employees, like we can say they go and give deliver, they are the delivery boys, they could be that these some names. And the timings also, shifts of the employees also to be considered to understand the employees. These are the major things.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, Anu, agar
I I think Lakshmi ji, I think it was pleasure hearing you. So as a chartered accountant, it was very nice to hear so many things. And now I think it's time for me to welcome our next speaker, Miss Deepu Bansal. Before I talk about our esteemed guest, I am impressed because we are having a topic on report writing. I think much need of the hour as to how we need to actually write our reports. So, talking about our speaker, she is having a huge CV to talk about. So, Deepu, with your permission, can I reduce it up because it is such a beautiful CV, and I was just going through it. 18 years of experience with being an ex-associate partner with KKC and Associates. She has handled and done multiple work. She specializes in BFSI segment, including capital market, market infrastructure, portfolio management, and services. She has got multiple representations to the board, audit committee for internal audit matters, special review in listed large companies, including internal audit. The names are huge: Axis Bank, Multi Commodity Exchange, Clearing Corporations, Tata Asset Management. The list is endless. I think, Deepu, we will have to have a separate session for you. So we have got concurrent audits: Tata AI, Kotak Mahindra. She's got statutory audits to her credit: Birla Sun Life, Aditi Birla Sun Life, especially special advisory projects, LIC. Okay. So the experience of Deepu, from industry experience of more than 8 years in internal audit of the insurance sector, including Aditya Birla, Bharti Access. She has also worked with as an associate firm within an associate firm of Big Four for more than a year as a statutory auditor. She has actively participated in the drafting of various matters about investment with the Insurance Regulatory Development Authority, our IRDA, and the insurance industry, including drafting guidance note about concurrent audits of investment functions in insurance companies. Apart from being a keynote speaker in various seminars organized by the study circles of the ICI, she has also served as a lecturer in Sophia College, Ajmer, for company law, cost accounting, income tax. Oh, Sophia College, Ajmer. That's excellent, Deepu. And she's also served as an independent director on the board of Z Entertainment Enterprise. Now that's the cherry on the cake. So I actually tried to shorten up your profile, but then it was so extensive and so good. I thought I should actually read out for our listeners to know about your work. So over to you, Deepu. The stage is all yours, and I think it's very, very going to be extremely fruitful and important for all of us to know about the nitty-gritties of how to write a good report. So over to you, Deepu.
Thank you so much, Anu.
Deepu. Hello,
Yeah,
Deepu.
ma'am.
Are you there? Are you listening to me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello. Am I
Can you
audible?
stop sharing a screen for a moment? Yeah. So can you please stop sharing the screen for a moment? Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Preeti,
Yeah.
you are audible. You're audible, Preeti.
Yeah. So hello, everyone. Hello.
Yes,
Yes.
hello, Preeti.
Hello,
You're
Yeah.
everyone.
audible.
And this is our series. And this is our series. Has been started, and I welcome all of you to this Yashaswini series 3. And this series is on internal audit, where I can see Deepu will be speaking now, and an art of report writing, because we do a lot of work actually in relation to the internal audit, but the management wants very crisp report. And this is an art of report writing where actually we can in short and sweet report we can say a lot of things, followed by the annexures. And I was talking to Deepu about the same, and she, with her experience, she suggested, why don't we can take this session. Can see all my dear moderators over here, Pravina Oswal, and my team of WMEC, and my all dear participants. It's our endeavor to serve all of you the best. And please suggest the topics. You can also suggest if you want to be the part as a moderator to begin with. We, this is a platform which is provided to everyone to upgrade yourself, and dissemination of knowledge is continuously happening. We'll be soon coming out with various other topics. So stay in touch, stay connected, and these all webinars are always put on our women portal. So anytime you can access the same. We are also coming out with now second series of Women Excellence Awards, and which will be announced very soon. And we are coming out with International Women Conference, first of its kind, first time in the history of ICAI. So please mark your calendar for 29th June, Saturday at Mumbai. where we will be having a lot of insightful sessions, international speakers, and global networking. Will be launching various things, and this International Women Conference for the benefit of our women members. So stay connected, and we'll be opening our registrations very soon within a week's time. So stay in touch, stay connected every Wednesday 3 to 5 with this Yashaswini and Idol series. So I always thank my speakers, moderators, team, and entire audience for the grand support which has been always shown with all this webinar series. So stay in touch, stay connected. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Preeti Savla, madam. She is heading the Women Members Excellence Committee and very enthusiastic about various opportunities for the women. And the series is the outcome of that vision for the women members for the chartered accountant. Definitely, we all are interested in, and will join the International Women's Seminar you are organizing on 26th June. Thank you very much, ma'am, for addressing our audience. Thank you. Over to you, Deepu, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anu, for such a heartwarming welcome and elaborating on my experiences as a part of my profile. Thank you, Preeti ma'am, for giving me this opportunity to share my views, or rather interact on the very interesting topic on writing or drafting an internal audit report. So with this, I would like to share my screen and upload the presentation. And thank you, Women Members Excellence Committee, for choosing this topic of report writing on an art of internal audit. Let's quickly switch on to the topic directly. So, a brief snapshot of my today's presentation. This includes what is the importance of clear and concise communication as a part of the internal audit reports. How do we identify over the different sections of an internal audit report which we have to draft? Definitely touching upon the 5C concept, because this is the most important principle, the most important concept, and which my erstwhile speaker Lakshmi ma'am has also touched upon it. What would be the key practices which are being used for writing an effective internal audit report, and what are the best practices which the internal auditors needs to follow in order to bring out the effective content in an internal audit report? So the crux of the internal audit report is to keep it short and keep it simple. With my experience, and I had been a part of the internal audit team or the board at both sides of the table, I had been. My initial experience was majorly into the corporates, where I was a part of the internal audit teams. I had on numerous occasions, and I have reviewed the internal audit reports, got the opportunities to present it later as a part of one of the India's biggest Indian firm. I had been a part of KKC, where I was leading the internal audit division, and got an opportunity to present the internal audit reports to the various audit committees. Got an experience of, what is expected from the internal audit, what is the expectation of the board members, what they want to look at it in the internal audit reports, how the presentation goes, how attractive it is. So with all these experiences, and now being a part of one of the audit committees of a large entity, I understand all the perspectives of what is expected from an internal auditor in terms of the audit report. Now, the entire crux of the audit, if it is not drafted properly, then we will not be able to communicate to the senior management, to the process owners, to the various stakeholders, what has been audited. So the entire thing, the entire work that we have done as a part of the audit exercise is all dependent on how the reports or the audit findings is being presented, right? So let's understand who are the stakeholders and what are their expectations. So if we see, we can divide our stakeholders into two parts. One is the internal stakeholders and one is the external stakeholders. The internal stakeholders, at the bottom of the pyramid, we have the process owners. So when we are doing the audit, we interact with the function, we interact with the various levels of the management. We understand, do the process walkthrough, have an understanding of the entire process, look at the various documents. So a day-to-day interaction is happening with who are the process owners, right? So once the report is done, it is drafted, we have a summary of the observations ready, we have the risk rating mentioned in it. Then comes as the head of the department, who will look at, who is the owner of the report rather, and who will look at, what are the audit observations are being there, what is the criticality of the observations being presented, whether it has been completed, whether the management action plans have been provided to you or not. Then comes the senior management, which is the MD, the CFO, the CEO of the entity. Then comes the external stakeholders. They are, audit committee can be an internal or external. They are the board who are looking at the entity. So internal audit becomes an important tool for them to assess the organization. How is the organization functioning? What are the criticality of issues, what functions are red rated or yellow rated or low risk, or how are we prepared in terms of any regulatory inspection, how are the stakeholders looking at it. Then we have the statutory auditors and the regulators. So an internal audit report is not only for one or two stakeholders, it's not only for the process owners that we are drafting it, it is for the entire gamut of stakeholders who are involved in reading the report. So it's very important that first we understand who are the stakeholders. Until unless we have their perspective, we will not be able to bring out the final outcome, which serves the purpose of all the various stakeholders. So first comes as a process owners. Now, what is important for the process owners? The process owners, they have the process understanding. They need genuine audit observations. It's not like, we just draft anything, a generic observation, or just write that SOP not documented and done. The process owners know what the process is. They've been doing it in and out. It might not be documented as a part of the process as SOP, but they might be following the various checklist. There is a documented maker checker control. So is it only about documentation, or is it also about not being practiced, or is it like the process is being practiced but not documented? So they need genuine observations. What is the observation? You write it. Okay. Then the next is understanding their point of view. Sometimes it is observed that, the internal auditor, they just want to mention an audit observation and they do not want to understand what the process owners mean to say. For example, there is a budget and there is a variance. Now, if there is a variance, and as an internal auditor, I'm just trying to point out saying that uh, the there was a budget of 1,000 rupee. However, 1,500 has been spent. That's it. And I complete it. I am not able to understand what is the perspective of the process owner. We need to understand why was the 500 additionally spent? Were there exceptional approvals which were taken? Was there a change in the management or the business plan? Was there, a special vendor which has been onboarded, or was there a reason to it? Just that we have found out our budget variance and it is being highlighted as a part of the audit report. So there is where, we miss joining the various dots if we do not understand the perspective of the process owner. Then solutions to improvise the controls with effective type management. It is very important that we understand or we provide them practical solutions. It's not as simple as, writing a recommendation mentioning improve the maker checker control or automate the process. Is not that simple to write a recommendation which is generic, or if it is a very small organization, it is not possible to automate a function, it is a process, it is not cost effective. It cannot be, as simple as just writing automate. So the function owners are dependent on you. They trust you. That is how they are cooperating with you, giving you the data, taking your inputs. Very important is to understand their perspective and give them practical solutions. The second is we need to understand who are the senior management and what are their expectations. Here, the senior management is very much concerned with what is the risk categorization. So an observation is there. They want to look at the holistic picture. What is the risk of the function? What are the issues? What automations are required, not required? Whether the process owner has actually accepted the audit observation or not, whether they have agreed, whose lapse is what, whether a maker checker not done, so whether the checker was there, not there, responsibility has been taken, was there a lapse at their end, was there a technical glitch in the system, so has it been identified, it has been communicated to the IT teams, action plan is there, responsibility is taken or not. So that is how the senior management or the head of the function, CXOs, will look at it. So their perspective is important to understand. That is, how do we write the root cause, how do we write the categorization, the management responsibility, and so on and so forth. Then comes the statutory auditors and the regulators. They are more concerned with the coverage. What are the statutory non-compliances, the financial impact of the audit report, and the overall comfort that they can draw, because they have to comment on the effectiveness of the internal auditors. So from their perspective also, it is important that all their criteria that they are going to look at is included as a part of our internal audit reports. And the most important is the audit committee and the board of directors and investors. They want to look at the overall coverage and the risk assessment, statutory compliances, summary of the key findings. They don't want to read like a transactional level issues. In 2 cases, the checker did not sign. In 3 cases, the format was not adhered to. In 4 cases, we found this. So they are not concerned with the transactional level issues. They are more concerned about what is the overall risk assessment, what process lapses are there, what can be, what is the financial impact, what value additions are the internal auditors bringing to the table, has the report been accepted by the management, was there a healthy communication between the auditors and the management, and they have agreed to the audit findings. My practical experience, I tell you, I've seen that audit reports, when it's being presented to the audit committees, we find that on the left-hand side, the auditor has mentioned that there is, a variance, or there has been, say, suppose there were charges to be applied for some, say, suppose, I'll give you one good example. The auditors are mentioning that the BCP testing or the DR testing was required to be done at a frequency of, say, a quarterly frequency. That is the audit observation which is mentioned. And the management has given a response saying that as per the industry practice, we follow an annual frequency. Right. So the auditors are mentioning a quarterly frequency of a DR testing. And at the same time, the management is mentioning that we follow an annual frequency of a DR testing. And the auditors have mentioned that the observation is implemented. Now, when this comes to the audit committee or to the board, how do the board reacts to it? Who is right? Should it be done at a quarterly frequency or should it be done at an annual frequency? What is the industry practice saying? What is a policy saying? Why the auditors have not discussed, or rather not made them the function to agree, or why the function could not convince the auditors? So there has to be a healthy discussion, understand, clarify, understand the management action plan, and come with a final solution to the board. That is what the board is expecting. So while drafting an audit report, the crux is we need to understand who are the stakeholders, what is expected, and we include the entire gamut of things into our audit report in a presentable manner. Moving ahead, let's discuss what are the contents of the internal audit report. So the first should be the cover page, which should give a broad overview about which organization, what is the audit period, date of submission, then what is the entity, which name of the entity who is doing the audit. The next would be the contents, that is so that, you give a proper reference to your audit report, what should be the, the executive summary numbers and the detailed issues and the annexure dates and all. Then there should be a summary. This is very, very, very critical to understand what is a summary of the internal audit report. It should give a brief overview in 1 or 2 slides as to how many observations are there, what is the criticality, what would be the lapses, who are the owners, what are the target dates, and so on and so forth. So it's very important that this one slide is very, it will give a perspective of the entire report, and they can decide, the stakeholders can decide what is relevant for them in the report. Then the purpose, scope, and methodology of the audit needs to be included. The audit observations, definitely, because this is going to give the detailed perspective of what the audit findings are. And this has to be supported by the appendix, which is the annexures, which can be in the graphical form, tabular form, and so on and so forth. The need of the audit finding is. I've included some examples of each of these contents of the audit report in the subsequent slides. See, suppose this is the cover page, which mentions the name, internal audit report, date, and who will be the consultants who are the auditors of the report. Then we can include a background to the report, that is which entity is being audited, what is the company into, and what have you been hired for, the name of the consultants, what is the scope, which is a brief about that we've been hired for doing the internal audit, and this would include the process reviews, the compliance review, and so on and so forth, what the company is into, and then the audit methodology. Then we have to include is the scope of work, the audit objective. What is the objective? What you have to, refer to, that is, say, suppose the documents which are included in the SOPs, the DOA, which is the delegation of authority, roles, responsibilities, the segregation of duties, then adherence to this, or it can be the regulations, it can be the data analytics. We have to provide the recommendations, then data migration, and so on and so forth. This is the audit objective broadly, and in the detailed scope, that is what all will be included in the audit. It's important that a comprehensive scope is mentioned so that later on it does not lead to any confusions after completing the audit. Then coming on to the important thing of the executive summary, there can be different formats of using an executive summary, of mentioning the executive summary. Say, suppose in one of the audit reports, I have mentioned the executive summary in categorizing it into high risk, medium risk, and the low risk observations. So it all depends upon, what is the kind of organization that you are auditing, what is, how matured is the senior management or the board, what is their expectations. The audit committee would have communicated their expectations in the earlier meetings as well, as to what is how do they want the report to be. So we need to understand what is their expectation, and that is how the executive summary is generally drafted, or you can use your own formats. So I've in this presentation, I have included 2 to 3 executive summary formats which can be used. Say, suppose here I've mentioned what is the process that I've ordered. This is your onboarding process, or it can be the KYC process, or the post-dated checks, and so on and so forth. So what is the process? Then what was the vulnerability that was highlighted? What was the key recommendations that we have given, and what was the management comment? So this is giving a brief synopsis of the high risk observations which were highlighted as a part of the audit report. And similarly, we can have another slide for the medium risk audit observations. Low risk audit observations or the process improvements may not be included in the executive summary until and unless it is an expectation of the senior management or the board. Otherwise, it is good to have it in the detailed report section. Another example of executive summary, we can mention the audit issues, the business impact of it, person responsible with the due dates. A third example wherein the audit observations could be mentioned along with the action plans. Then the risk ratings can be the risk category, whether the observation is pertaining to a financial risk, operational risk, regulatory risk. So we can give an index in the bottom, and then we can mention what was the kind of risk category, which is giving a bird's eye view of the entire report. Then the risk rating, how many high risk, low risk, medium rated observations have been highlighted. The control rating, how the controls are, whether they are moderate or they're limited controls. And then the slide reference number. Say suppose somebody is interested in only reading observation number 3, so they can refer to the relevant slide. The next section of the audit report, it mentions about drafting and audit observation. So the audit observation drafting, that slide, or if it is a Word report, then there are key contents which are to be included in drafting and audit observation. The first is that there should be a proper heading of an audit observation. It should not be too much in detail. It should not be, using motherhood statements. Say suppose um, investment policy not adhered to. So can we write such a mother statement mentioning that the policy was not adhered to? It's too much of an alarming situation wherein, the reader would feel as in, the function is just doing whatever they want. There is none of the clauses of the investment policy which is being followed, or inadequate physical verification. So such motherhood statements, or such statements which giving a complete negative impact or complete positive impact, um, misleading statements should not be included in the heading. It should be very clear as to, there have been instances found out, or you are highlighting a process gap, and so on and so forth. Then the observation section needs to detail what the observation is. We will read about how the observation needs to be drafted in the subsequent slides. The other key content of the slide would include the risk rating, the business impact. We can mention high, medium, or low. The root cause analysis, another important thing, whether it was a people issue, it was a process issue, it was a technology issue. So what went wrong has to be included here. Then there can be recommendation, and it has to be implementable recommendations which have to be included here. Again, not generic ones. Like in every observation, we are mentioning maker checker needs to be strengthened, review needs to be strengthened, and so on and so forth. Then the management comments, very important. It is that the management comments have to be there, which have to be in line with the recommendations that we have highlighted. And the target date, the person responsible. So these are the key contents which are to be mentioned in the audit findings slide. And similarly, we can create multiple slides or multiple pages wherein depending upon the audit observations. Then after the audit observations have been mentioned comes the annexures. And we can mention it in the tabular form, or maybe in a graphical form, as is the requirement of the audit observation. This is an example of a graphical representation. That is, what was the severity, what was the observation status, the function level observation, so on and so forth. So depending upon what your audit observation is, the charts can be prepared, it can be depicted, which is very much useful for the seniors, the heads of the function, and the audit committee people to understand the observation. Now, coming on to the core of the drafting, the internal audit observations, and understanding again the concept of the 5C for drafting. Let's just have a quick recap. I heard from Anu as well, as she was mentioning that during the CA study days that we've been, listening to this concept. So let's understand it. And you know what? Practically telling you, over my 18 years of experience, this concept really helps in drafting the observation very effectively, because what I have seen is, as as juniors, we are very much excited once we find out any audit issue. Say, suppose we find a supporting of 100 rupee and the recording has been done of 1,000, right? And the team is overexcited. They will just mention that uh, a gap found out, that 100 rupee invoice recorded as 1,000 rupee, and done with it. Yeah, say suppose I'll give you another example. Um, there is a process called background verification. So whenever an employee joins, the entity, it conducts a background verification. They will do a reference check also. They will also check whether the documents which are submitted by the employee is correct, or they are all fake documents, or the experience certificates is correct, and so on, the criminal check, and so on and so forth. So there is a process. Once we do the audit, we are very excited that the process is followed. Okay, and if you find some gaps, that in 2 cases the background verification was not done, the team would be very happy in writing that there is a background verification process, but in 2 cases we found that the background verification was not done. Simple. Or they will say that there is a turnaround time, that the background verification has to be done in, say, suppose 15 days prior to the joining of the employees. They will see how much was the turnaround time and report that in 10 instances found that the background verification was not done in 10 instances. And that's it, wherein they stop themselves from finding out the other important aspects of the audit observation. And that is where we lack in drafting the audit observation completely and effectively. So let's understand why and how it is important. So criteria, the first important thing is criteria. That is, we need to understand what we are auditing. That is what it should be. There has to be a benchmark. Now, this can be if we have a list of regulations. Say, suppose we are auditing a regulated entity, say, suppose an NBFC or a bank or an insurance company. And so we need to understand what we are auditing. So whenever there is an audit observation, first what we have to write is that what should be, what is a policy saying, or what is a standard saying, or what is a regulation saying, or what is a general practice which is followed by the entity. So there has to be a benchmark standard. That is what the background is all about. The background is not that we've been doing an internal audit of this X entity for the period April to December, and on review of 500 vouchers, we found this. That is not the exact background. It's very important that we write what the criteria is. That is where, against what we are benchmarking. Second is what the condition is. That is what you found out. What is the problem which is identified? And please do not stop here. Once we identify the problem, that is, there is a turnaround time which is defined of 30 days. The condition is it has not been met in 10 cases, right? Now, important is that we do an RCA, which is the root cause analysis. Understand what it is about, why this was missed out. Was it a people issue? That is, a person has not done the job properly. It was an oversight. Was it a technical glitch? Is the system not responding properly? The system has been fed in such a way that an X thing has to be done, and it is not identifying, it is not showing the limits which are there. Why did the problem occur? That is very important to discuss, and then to mention it in detail, that this is what the root cause is, because this is what the cause which has to be plugged. Next is a consequence. Now, if there is a miss, whether it is important or not, right? Say, suppose there is a TAT of 10 days to collect a background verification report, and it has come on the 12th day, right? So what is the risk to the organization? An internal process breach, right? Internal TAT breach. But will it lead to any financial impact? Is there a negative report which is highlighted there in those 2 cases? No. Is there a TAT breach? Yes. Is it within the, does the management function and knows about it? Yes. Is it actually leading to any operational issues? No. So we need to understand, because this is going to, the senior management or the board will ask that, okay, you are bringing this observation to my table, but what is it that you want to highlight? So, we cannot put it though background verification is a critical function, it is a critical process in the organization. But if you take it to the board saying that in one case we found that the TAT of 10 days was not met, so they will ask you what was the consequence, what was the effect, what is the risk, and there is where they will say that no, the internal audit is not effective. So first we need to understand that what is the impact of it? Is only the process non-adherence by 1 day, but what is the impact? Until unless we find that, we will not be able to draft the observation properly, we will not be able to identify what the cause is, we will not be able to do the risk rating of it. It's not background verification, high risk, iske liye all the observations will be high risk. Right. Say, suppose the DR process that you were talking about. Disaster recovery testing is a very, very critical observation. But if the board approved policy is mentioning that it has to be an annual exercise, and for that particular type of industry, doing it annually is the industry practice, that's the industry benchmarking. Then the auditor only mentioning that it has not been done quarterly, and DR is very, very, very important, and that is it is high risk. That cannot be a correct way of rating an audit observation, saying that the process is high risk, it should be quarterly, and hence it is high risk. Right. So we need to understand the, what the criteria was, because it's a board approved policy of doing it annually. What it is not done, what is the cause or what is the impact? Everything has to be understood before drafting. So it's very important that we write down what are the pointers that we need to keep in mind when we are trying to frame an audit observation. And then the last is corrective action. It's very important that the auditor need to understand what the cause is and how this has to be uh, covered up, right? And again, repeating it, reiterating that it cannot be generic. It cannot be strengthen maker checker controls. I have seen the junior team drafting the reports mentioning maker checker strengthen, maker checker strengthen. No, it doesn't go that way. We need to understand and give practical solution, implementable solution, best of the practices, industry practices, implementable solution. It's not that say suppose another example that comes to my mind, a payroll file. So we gave it to the vendor. Most of the organizations, you'll find that the payroll is outsourced. So the salary details will go to the vendor. They will do the salary calculation. The salary register will come to the organization. Now here we'll find that in the risk control matrices or in the process, it's mentioned that uh, this salary register, which comes to the organization, the HR head reviews the salary register, right? So can you imagine an organization of, say, suppose 10,000 employees? That is why the process has been outsourced. And the vendor is actually doing a check and a calculation of it and a salary register coming. Then is it possible for the head of the HR head to actually recalculate it? Is it possible? No. So can we mention that, he has to, and this is kind of a solutions which are given by the internal auditors, mentioning that the salary register will come over an email and the HR head has to, mention, document, saying that, okay, this has been reviewed by me. Is it practically possible that he mentioning or just documenting that the salary register was re-verified by the function after it has been prepared by the vendor? Not possible. Find out what is a better way. Right. So, like a better way could be that after the salary register comes, variance analysis is prepared. What were the number of employees in the previous month? What were the number of employees in the current month? Is there been a variation? How many exits have to be there? Have been there? Is there an increment? A detailed variance sheet is prepared and that is reviewed so that the function head gets an overall view and can review it, and that synopsis is sent to the HR head and he can review and mention that, okay, this has been reviewed, which acts as a Third level check, after the maker checker has been done or the vendor has reviewed it, then the HR head can look at the variance analysis and mention that it has been reviewed. And that's a more practicable solution rather than, he looking at the Excel sheet again and mentioning, okay, it has been reviewed, and then again reverting it over an email and so. Right. So things have to be practical. Another example could be, say, suppose there is a service organization and we have this customer service team, right? So for the customer service team, we understand that there is a CRM system which is maintained by big organization. But see, suppose it is a small organization just into the startup phase and the number of customer complaints are not more than like 40, 50, managed by a team of 2, 3 members, and it is over in Excel. So we cannot mention saying that, the process needs to be automated because it's the entire life cycle of the complaint or whatever the inward or the outward communication is clearly visible. Now we need to understand the practicability, whether it is cost beneficial at this stage of the organization when there are 10 to 20 complaints, whether the company is in the position of investing amount in implementation of the CRM system at this stage. So it should not be like that, if there is a miss out or there is a tad deviation which is observed, that at this point in time we mentioned that automate the process. So understand the practical solution, whether it is implementable or not, and then accordingly advise the function and the entity accordingly. I've mentioned 1 or 2 examples of how the report could be drafted using the concept of 5 Cs. Again, taking one example from the BFSI, there is an RBI regulation which mentions that whenever you are collecting the KYC documents from the customer, it is mandatory that the Aadhaar numbers, they have to be redacted or masked. Now, it can be manually done, it can be automated into the systems. And see, on a review, I found that out of 200 cases, in 50 instances, the number was not masked, right? So how do we draft it? First, it's important that we mention what the criteria is, that as per the RBI master directions on KYC, it is mandatory that the regulated entities, they mask or black out the first 8 digits of the Aadhaar numbers for all the customers from the Aadhaar images as part of the KYC process. It's important that we mention that against what we are benchmarking. Second is we write what the current state is. That is, what was your observation? We noted 50 instances out of 200 sample files wherein the Aadhaar numbers were not masked. Simple. Then what went wrong or what was the cause of it? That needs to be defined. So we can mention that the sales team is responsible for the masking at the branch level. There's a checker control also, that is at the central operations level, which is once the file moves to the head office, then the operations team will re-verify. If it is not, then they will mask it. And we observed that there was a process lapse at both ends, even at the branch level and at the central operations level. So this is a little bit elaborating about what went wrong and why it went wrong. It's a people issue, right? Then consequence. Now, what will it lead to? This leads to the violation of the regulatory guidelines and lapses in the processes as mentioned in the standard operating procedures. So the SOP also mentions that it has to be redacted. The guidelines mentions that it has to be done by the entity. The SOP will define that it has to be done at the sales level and at the operations level. So this is the impact that it has been. It can lead to penalty or, if it is severe, then it can be reputational risk. So we need to mention what the consequences about it and what the corrective action is. Now, what I'm going to suggest to the entity, that the sales and the operations team, they need to be reiterated about the process because they need to be explained why it is important. So they need to be reiterated about masking. And also, we can also suggest that automated solutions are available in the market, which are being used by other BFSI entities. So that can be implemented to mask the Aadhaar numbers. So practical solutions needs to be given. So this is how you draft an audit observation. And once it is drafted, Then this is how it will be presented in the slide. That is wherein we will mention the observation, the impact and all, and the management comments will be taken along with the target dates and the person responsible. Herein, the details, that is the 50, that can be included in the annexures, and a reference to the annexure can be given in the observation. Taking another example, say suppose there is an investment policy which mentions that investments can be done only in fixed deposits or mutual funds. And it also mentions that only the mutual funds which have the assets under management of 10,000 crores, only in those mutual funds you're going to invest. So this is a criteria. The condition is that during the period April to September, the company invested 2 crores in mutual funds, but the asset size was less than the defined criteria. What was the cause? Again, a people issue. Treasury team had an oversight of the defined selection criteria. Consequence, it will lead to violation of the investment policy and exposure to market risk, because they had a defined criteria that bases the returns or bases the AUM, that these are the preferred or they are the approved mutual funds where the investments needs to be done, but that has been not followed. So we can mention that design and implement a checklist for the investments wherein the selection criteria of the mutual funds needs to be followed, and the criteria which is mentioned in the policy needs to be included here, so that there is not a miss out and then the maker checker is there when there is a huge investments being done. Some of the do's and don'ts of report writing. With some examples, let's understand, what is important that we follow while we draft a report. Now, following this privacy criteria, we can draft the audit observation, but again, some key things. One is factual accuracy. It's important that the facts needs to be cleared. Say, suppose we are mentioning that as per the process laid down. Okay, so as per the defined process, it's important that there has to be an SOP. We just cannot write that, basis the SOP or as per the policy, it has to be there. We say the exception approval was not taken. Is there an exceptional matrix defined or not defined? That is important. So whatever you're writing, it's important that it has to be factually correct. Don't be, creative in mentioning any facts, anything in the audit observation which is not factually correct. So read it twice, thrice, but see that the facts are clear. The logical flow has to be maintained. Sometimes we, try to jump from one point to another. We will write that the policy has not been revised. However, it was mentioned, it was found that the physical verification was not done. It was also found that the POs were not approved. And further, moreover, we also found that there was debtors aging of more than a year, amounting to this much. So a flow has to be maintained. Whenever there is an observation, let it go into a particular flow. One point I would like to mention here from my experience is that, the audit reports needs to be short and sweet. So sometimes, again, we are overwhelmed, like there are 40 observations we have identified, but these are transaction level issues. It's very important that similar type of observations, they are clubbed into single observation and make it more effective. Use bullet points to mention. Say, suppose you have found 5 violations to any policy, then mention that the company has laid down a policy approved by the board on this date. We found the following violations. First is physical verification was not carried out as per the defined frequency. Secondly, the assets tagging was not done. Thirdly, the FAR has not been timely updated, or the accounting policy which has defined the policy has not been followed, depreciation rates not current. So the same theme of events, the same theme of audit observations pertaining to the fixed assets or the policy not adherence needs to be clubbed and presented, because many a times the team is excited to present 5 different observations. First is asset tagging not done, second is physical verification not carried out, third FAR not updated. So the management or the seniors who are the stakeholders, they will lose their concentration, or they will lose interest in the report if they're not able to find effective observations. So it's important that similar type of observations needs to be clubbed and properly presented in bullet forms, so that it gives you an overall perspective of one function or of one process, rather than dividing it into different slides or different number of observations. It's effective to give those 5 to 6 process deviations or observations in one slide, rather than creating 40 slides. And they will never have time to go through those 40 slides unless it's very, very, very high risk kind of a report. Second, okay, next thing, very important, after we draft a report, formatting is important. Correct formatting, content should be right. It should look uniform. The fonts that we are using, see that it is in the same style, same font, same size. Do not use much of color combinations in drafting the audit reports. It has to be consistent. The words have to be consistent. Sometimes we use the entity has documented a policy, then we write that the company has done this. However, the function did not follow. The department head was not aware of it. It's important that we see that, consistent words are used when we are drafting the report. Usage of numbers. Again, consistency is important. If millions is used in all the observations, all slides, millions will be used. If it is in crores, thousands, just see that it is important that we use the same numbering method which is used in one observation. Bullet points, visual presentations wherever it is needed. Very important, review your report. Now you have to review your report. What you can do is draft a report, take out some cooling time, and after that cooling time, read your report. Once you yourself read your report or get it reviewed by the senior, take the stakeholders or the seniors' inputs. That helps in redrafting the report or making it more effective. Then understand the management perspective too, that we've discussed in the earlier slide. Also, sometimes we are so much excited of writing about an audit observation that we do not want to understand what the management wants to say about it, or rather we want to keep surprises to the end. We will take the audit observation, keep on noting it on notepad or our laptops, and in the end we want to issue a very high risk rated kind of an audit observation or audit report. It is important that initially, if there is something which is, complicated observation is coming, have a verbal discussion with the process owners, have a verbal discussion with the seniors. Maybe they have some perspective, some another set of questions that you might go and ask the management to understand the entire issue, which helps you in drafting. Do not jump to conclusions there itself. Understand the management's perspective also. So these are some of the do's that I've mentioned. One more important thing which I would like to highlight here is, initially how we write the report is during the internal audit of the HR function for the period April to September. On review of 500 files, we found that in 50 files, there was this. Now, all these things that we have written is redundant, because we've already mentioned as a part of the cover page scope that we are doing an HR review. We've already mentioned that we are doing it for the period of April to September. We've mentioned the number of employees are 500. So why do we need to highlight in every observation then we are doing an HR review for this entity for this period and there were 500 employees? Why do we want to use these redundant words? Why can't we just write saying that noted 50 instances out of a sample of 100 wherein this was not found? Observe this. Why do not use the word we found? It's redundant. Obviously, you are the auditors, you are doing the audit. Management has given the scope, which is already mentioned in the initial slides. So come straight to the point that this is what the audit observation is. Noted so many exceptions out of this. Then come to the details about it, that this is what the cause is, this was affected, this is what expected, and this is why this has happened. So come straight to the point. That's very important. Some of the don'ts. Do not use he, she, or the person's name, like, the senior person, this ex person informed us, or this person is not, Ashok's signature was not there on the bank reconciliation statement. Do not use redundant words. I just spoke about it. colloquial languages sometimes which as a layman that we use, that he needs this. No, he requires, the function requires this needs to be, performs. Bank reconciliation is performed, bank reconciliation is done nahi, like, okay. Then jargons, whenever you're doing any technical audit of any entity, there are technical words which are mentioned in the SOP, which the function will also use. But please understand that your stakeholders may or may not belong to the same industry. The board might, the independent directors or the external stakeholders, they might come from other backgrounds also. So using some technical jargons which are very specific to this process or this entity can be simplified, so that simply it can be presented to the board and they are able to understand, rather than explaining the definitions at the time of making a presentation to the audit committee. Overstuffing the sentences, keep it short, simple. Sometimes you try to use too much of conjunctions in the sentences, this was done, however this was not done, and this was also found, though this was not done, this would be leading to deviation to the process level controls and not documentation of this. No, please see that it is very short, or it can be cut into different sentences rather than including too many words in one sentence, which is confusing the reader of the observation. They're not able to make any crux out of it. They're not able to understand it because there are too many sentences which are clubbed there. Don't edit the moment you finish drafting. Give a cooling period. And judgmental sentences, that essence of the observation is lost. The personal opinions or judgments are there, that we understand that this is a gross violation. No, you need to be very specific about what it is all about. Certain tips for writing internal audit report: plain language that we just discussed about it. Be very specific. You have to follow the 5C criteria: condition, cause, consequences, and the corrective actions. Tailor the report to the specific audience, because it all depends upon, it's not like that you're going to make multiple reports. It's about which part of the report that has to be presented. So when it is with the process owners, you will initially discuss your audit observations, which are in the draft format. Once the management comments are there, then it will be taken to the next level. The detailed report is presented to the senior management. However, when it goes to the audit committee, it is very important that we bring the crux of the reports and only the key observations are presented. So a part of the observation in a more graphical format or in a more summary format, highlighting the risk and the action plan, has to be taken to the committee levels. Avoid using jargons. Again, very technical words or jargons should not be used. Use of visuals to improve the readability. And again, another important thing is get the feedback from the stakeholders. Even to the audit committee, the feedback can be taken. The function heads, the function owners, process owners, they are also very important stakeholders who will give you the feedback on how the report is. They are the owners of the report. Rather, you have written it, but they are the process owners. So they will be more happy to read and give your genuine feedback. No, this is wrong. What you are writing, this is what you need to be more clear. Do not exaggerate it, and so on and so forth. Some best practices: state the critical issues first. It's very important. Even if you have 5 high risk points, then anything which is, regulatory non-compliance has to become first, or something which is leading to major financial loss, reputational risk. So which are critical issues, it's very important that they are placed first. Then illustrate the risk. It's important that we need to identify what the risk is and also quantify it. Say, suppose it can be a revenue loss, then try to quantify it. If your audit period was, say, 6 months, and there are deviations which are being highlighted, then mention it and then extrapolate it. It's important that this is highlighted. That is, how much was the risk impact, because that gives a first hand information to the management to take any decisions. Then it is important that we have a graphical representation, because bar charts, we had a slide here which mentions how the data can be presented to the management. Emphasize the potential for improvement, because it's not only that we are highlighting the audit observations, but also what are the solutions are there that we are highlighting. And we being internal auditors, and we are auditing different entities, different processes, we know we know what are the industry practices which are being there. We can research about it, we can inquire from the seniors. It's important that we mention about what are the practicable solutions, and then the tabular representation. So these are some of the best practices which makes your reports quite effective and interesting for the stakeholders. So that's it from my side, my presentation today. I hope I've been able to deliver some of the important, criteria of writing an internal audit report. What are the things to be kept in mind while we are drafting? Because it's not as simple. It's definitely an art to, craft out what we have found in an audit. So the entire exercise of doing an audit ultimately culminates into the final report, and that is the entire outcome of the hard work that we have done as part of the audit. And that is the how important it is to craft the audit report. I'll be open to questions if any.
Yes. So there are, I think, 3, 4 questions in the chat box. I'll just read it out. Uh, so one question is, Madam, for 100 crore service provider company, how can we ensure internal control? What points we should take care?
How can we ensure internal controls?
Correct. How can we
Yeah.
ensure internal control and what points we should take?
Okay. So, being a 100 crore company, though this question is not relating to drafting of an internal report, but it's not as an auditor I'm asking, or as a management I'm asking, this needs to be very clear as to what is the objective of internal control. How can be taken is, we have a very important concept of, drafting a risk control matrix, understand what the organization is, understand the financials, understand what are the material accounts, and then from a top-down approach, that is, once we identify what are the material accounts, it's important that we lay down the risk control matrix of each and every function, and we understand what are the risks of each function, and map the controls around it. Once the controls are mapped, and then these can be audited. And while drafting the risk control matrix, what are the inherent risk in each and every process, activity, and function needs to be identified, which will give a holistic view of what are the risks and what are the controls which needs to be looked into.
Correct, yeah. So I think there are no further questions for the report writing.
Sure.
Yeah, correct. So I would like to thank Deepu Bansal ma'am and CA Lakshmi Rao for taking up today's session. And I would also like to thank CA Preeti Savla, the chairperson, and CA Kimisha Soni, vice chairperson, for handling this session. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.